The clouds outside the airplane window looked like soft cotton candy as Dr. Maya Johnson sank into her first-class seat. Her shoulders dropped with relief. After 5 back-to-back meetings in Chicago, she was finally heading home to Atlanta. The leather seat felt like a small blessing after the week she'd had. Maya placed her carry-on bag under the seat in front of her and pulled out the folder with next week's presentations. Being the head of an aerospace engineering team meant her work never really stopped. But that was the price of being at the top of her field at 42. 20 years of hard work had earned her this seat, both on the plane and in the boardroom. A young man in a business suit took the seat next to her, nodding politely before turning to his phone. Maya appreciated the quiet neighbor. She took out her noise-canceling headphones, a birthday gift to herself last year, and settled them over her ears. The cabin noise faded away, replaced by the gentle piano music she used to help her focus. The first-class cabin was filling up with the usual mix of business travelers. Most were already lost in their phones or laptops. 2 rows ahead, a white man about her age was wearing headphones bigger than hers, nodding along to whatever he was listening to. An older couple across the aisle were sharing earbuds to watch something on a tablet. Maya opened her folder and began reviewing the notes for Monday's meeting. The numbers blurred together after a while. Her eyes felt heavy. Maybe she could close them, just for a minute. A sharp tap on her shoulder jolted her awake. Maya looked up to see a flight attendant, her name tag read Heather, standing over her with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Headphones off during the safety demonstration, please." Heather said loudly, as if Maya couldn't hear her through the headphones. Maya slid the headphones down to her neck. "I'm sorry, what was that?" "All electronic devices need to be turned off and headphones removed during the safety demonstration," Heather repeated, her voice carrying through the cabin. Several passengers turned to look. Maya glanced around. The businessman with the large headphones was still wearing them, now tapping away on his laptop. The older couple still had their earbuds in. "Of course," Maya said quietly, removing her headphones completely and placing them on her lap. "Thank you for the reminder." Instead of moving on, Heather stood there. "Those need to be completely turned off as well," she said, pointing to the headphones. Maya blinked in surprise. "They're off now," she explained. "They're just sitting on my lap." Heather's smile tightened further. "They need to be stowed in your bag for takeoff." Maya looked around again. Nobody else was being asked to stow their headphones. The white businessman 2 rows up was still wearing his, unbothered. A flight attendant had just walked past him without saying a word. "I'm sorry, but I don't understand," Maya said, keeping her voice calm and professional, the same voice she used in difficult board meetings. "The gentleman up there is still using his headphones, and the couple across the aisle have earbuds in." Heather's eyes narrowed slightly. "We're addressing all passengers, ma'am. Please stow your headphones now." The businessman next to Maya looked up from his phone, glancing between them with a frown. Maya took a deep breath. She'd been in these situations before. 20 years in aerospace had taught her which battles to fight and which to let go. This wasn't worth escalating. "Certainly," she said, placing her headphones in her bag. But Heather didn't move on. "Your full attention is required for the safety demonstration," she added, gesturing to the front of the cabin where another flight attendant was preparing to begin. "I fly weekly," Maya explained gently. "I'm very familiar with the safety procedures." "It's required for all passengers," Heather insisted, her voice rising slightly. People were staring now. "Is there a problem here?" A male flight attendant had appeared. His name tag read, Kevin. "No problem," Maya said. "I've put my headphones away as requested." Kevin looked at Heather, who pressed her lips together. "This passenger was being difficult about following safety protocols," she said. Maya felt a flush of heat rise in her chest. "I wasn't being difficult," she said firmly. "I simply noted that other passengers still have their headphones on, but I've complied with the request." Kevin looked around the cabin, taking in the businessman with his headphones and the couple with their earbuds. His expression shifted slightly. "Heather, I've got this," he said quietly. To Maya, he said, "I apologize for any confusion, ma'am. You're right. We need to be consistent with all passengers. Please enjoy your flight." Heather's face tightened, but she moved away to continue preparing for takeoff. Kevin followed her, and Maya could see them having a hushed conversation at the front of the cabin. The businessman beside Maya cleared his throat. "That was strange," he said. Maya gave him a small smile. "It happens." "Not in first class, it doesn't," he replied, frowning. "I'm in these seats every week, and I've never been hassled about headphones during boarding." Maya didn't respond. What could she say? That this wasn't her first time being singled out? That as a black woman, even her first-class ticket in business, attire didn't always shield her from different treatment? The safety demonstration began. Maya watched politely, though she could recite it from memory after years of business travel. The demonstration ended, and the plane began to taxi. Once they reached cruising altitude, Maya took out her headphones again. As she was about to put them on, she noticed Heather watching her from the galley, that same tight smile on her face. Another flight attendant, her tag said Lisa, came by with the drink cart. "What can I get for you?" she asked the businessman next to Maya. "Scotch, neat please," he replied. Lisa nodded and turned to Maya. "And for you, ma'am?" "Sparkling water with lime, please," Maya said. Lisa poured the drinks and moved on. Maya sipped her water and tried to return to her work, but found it hard to concentrate. The confrontation had left her feeling drained. A gentle ding announced an incoming email on her tablet. Maya opened it, then sat up straighter. It was from the CEO of Regional Air Group, the parent company that owned this airline and 3 others across the country. The message was brief. "Looking forward to your insights on Monday. The board is eager to hear your assessment before making final decisions." Maya took another sip of her water, her mind racing. 3 months ago, she'd been approached for a new position, Director of Operations for Regional Air Group. The job would put her in charge of customer experience across all 4 airlines. The final interview was Monday. What the email didn't mention was something the CEO had told her in confidence. The airline was facing a growing number of complaints about inconsistent service and possible discrimination. They needed someone who could observe firsthand and make tough decisions. As Maya glanced toward the galley where Heather was still watching her, a plan began to form in her mind. Maybe this flight wasn't just taking her home. Maybe it was taking her exactly where she needed to be. The businessman beside Maya took a sip of his scotch and set it down carefully on his tray table. He had been stealing glances at her for the past 10 minutes. Finally, he leaned over slightly. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said in a low voice. "But are you Dr. Johnson, the aerospace engineer who designed the new fuel system for the F-35? Maya looked up from her tablet surprised. She was used to being recognized at industry events but rarely on random flights. "Yes, that's me," she said with a small smile. Though it was a team effort, the man's eyes widened. "Wow, your work is brilliant. I'm Thomas Chen. I work for Lockheed Martin in systems integration." He extended his hand, which Maya shook. "We implemented your fuel system designs last year. Game changer." "Thank you," Maya said. "Always nice to meet someone who appreciates the technical details." Thomas glanced toward the front of the cabin where Heather was arranging items in a cart. "I can't believe how they treated you earlier," he whispered. "Completely unprofessional." Maya gave a slight shrug. "It happens more often than you'd think." "Well, it shouldn't," Thomas said firmly. He took another sip of his scotch, then added, "You know, my sister-in-law works for Regional Air Group, the parent company of this airline. They're actually looking for a new operations director to overhaul their customer experience. Someone like you would be perfect for that." Maya kept her expression neutral. "Is that so?" "Absolutely. The current management is." He lowered his voice further. "Let's just say there are issues. My sister-in-law says they're bringing in someone from outside the industry to shake things up." Maya nodded thoughtfully. If Thomas only knew. 3 rows behind them, an older woman was trying to get a flight attendant's attention. Maya watched as the woman, who appeared to be South Asian, raised her hand several times while Heather walked past, seemingly not noticing. Finally, the woman pressed her call button. Heather turned with an expression of annoyance, then clicked off the button. "Did you see that?" Thomas asked, following Maya's gaze. "I did," Maya said quietly. "What can I help you with?" They heard Heather ask the woman, her tone noticeably cooler than it had been with other passengers. "My tray table is stuck," the woman explained. "I can't get it to open." Heather sighed audibly. "You just need to press the button underneath," she said, making no move to help. The woman tried again. "I am pressing it, but it's not working." With another sigh, Heather reached over and pushed the table roughly. It dropped open, and suddenly nearly hitting the woman's lap. "There you go," Heather said, already turning away. "Thank you," the woman said softly, straightening the table. Maya made a mental note of the incident. This wasn't looking good for Heather or the airline. As she observed, she noticed a pattern. The flight attendants spent more time chatting with certain passengers, mostly white men in business attire, while other passengers had to work harder to get basic service. Maya pulled out her phone and opened her notes app, discreetly recording what she was seeing. She'd been asked by Regional Air Group's CEO to assess customer experience across their airlines, and she was getting quite an education on this flight. The businessman, Thomas, was still watching her. "Are you taking notes?" he asked curiously. Maya thought quickly. "Force of habit," she said. "I'm always collecting data." "That's what makes you such a good engineer," Thomas said with a smile. "Always analyzing." If he only knew, Maya thought again. The truth was more complicated than Maya had let on. 6 months ago, Regional Air Group had approached her about becoming their new director of operations. At first, she'd declined. She loved her work in aerospace engineering. But the CEO, William Parks, had been persistent. "We need someone who understands systems thinking," he'd told her during their second meeting. "Someone who can see the patterns others miss." When he'd shown her the data, increasing complaints about inconsistent service, particularly from passengers of color, Maya's interest had been piqued. As a black woman who traveled frequently, she'd experienced these issues firsthand. The chance to actually fix a broken system was appealing. "We want you to experience our airlines as a regular customer before you start," William had explained last week. "Book flights under your maiden name if you want. Dress casually. Just observe and take notes. Then tell us what needs to change." Maya had agreed to a 3-month trial period. She would fly on all 4 airlines owned by Regional Air Group, assess the issues firsthand, and present her findings to the board. Today's flight was her first official undercover trip, though she hadn't expected to encounter problems so quickly. A ding from the intercom interrupted her thoughts. The captain announced they were expecting turbulence and asked all passengers to return to their seats and fasten their seatbelts. The flight attendants began moving through the cabin, checking seatbelts and tray tables. Kevin, the male flight attendant who had intervened earlier, approached Maya's row. "Seatbelts fastened?" he asked with a friendly smile. "All set," Maya replied. "Good," Kevin said. He lowered his voice. "I want to apologize again for earlier. That wasn't our standard procedure." Maya appreciated his professionalism. "Thank you," she said simply. As Kevin moved on, Heather appeared with the drink cart again. She served Thomas first. "Another scotch, sir?" "No, thank you," Thomas said, his tone noticeably cooler than before. Heather turned to Maya. "Anything else for you?" she asked, her smile still not reaching her eyes. "I'm fine, thank you," Maya said. As Heather moved on, Thomas leaned over again. "You know, my sister-in-law mentioned something interesting about that operations director position. The word is they've already hired someone, and that person might be evaluating flights undercover before they officially start." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Really? That would be thorough." "Corporate espionage," Thomas joked. "But for good. Imagine if that person was on this flight, seeing how some of the crew are behaving." Maya allowed herself a small smile. "That would be something." The plane hit a patch of turbulence, bouncing slightly. The seatbelt sign dinged again. Maya gripped her armrests instinctively. Not a fan of turbulence? Thomas asked. I understand the physics perfectly, Maya said. Doesn't mean I have to enjoy it. The plane steadied after a few minutes. Maya returned to her tablet, opening the detailed profile of Coastal Airways, the airline they were currently flying. It was one of 4 owned by Regional Air Group, and, according to the data William had sent her, it had the highest number of service complaints per passenger. Looking at the numbers now, Maya could see patterns emerging. Complaints spiked on certain routes and with certain crew combinations. There was definitely something systematic happening, not just isolated incidents. The turbulence picked up again, more strongly this time. A female passenger across the aisle gasped as her drink sloshed over the rim of her cup. Folks, this is your captain speaking. A voice came over the intercom. We're hitting some weather, so we'll be keeping that seatbelt sign on. Flight attendants, please take your seats. The flight attendants secured the cabin and returned to their jump seats. Maya watched as Kevin helped an elderly man stow his items before the turbulence worsened. The plane dropped suddenly, eliciting a few startled cries from passengers. Maya's stomach lurched. She reminded herself of the engineering behind aircraft design, how planes were built to withstand much worse than this. Not exactly the smooth, first-class experience they advertise, Thomas commented, trying to lighten the mood. Can't control the weather, Maya replied. The turbulence continued for another 20 minutes before the plane finally broke through to calmer air. The captain turned off the seatbelt sign, and the flight attendants resumed their service. Lisa, the flight attendant who had served drinks earlier, approached their row. Can I get you anything else? She asked. I'm good, thanks, Thomas said. Actually, Maya said, could I trouble you for a coffee? Black, please. Absolutely, Lisa said with a genuine smile. I'll bring that right out. As Lisa walked away, Maya noticed Heather watching from the galley again. There was something in her expression, a mix of suspicion and annoyance that made Maya uncomfortable. The remainder of the flight passed without incident. Maya continued taking notes, documenting everything from response times to tone of voice. By the time the captain announced their initial descent into Atlanta, she had filled several pages with observations. Thomas handed her a business card as they prepared for landing. If you're ever interested in systems integration work at Lockheed, give me a call, he said. We need more brilliant minds like yours. Thank you, Maya said, tucking the card into her bag. I appreciate that. What Thomas didn't know was that, by Monday morning, Maya would be sitting in the Regional Air Group headquarters presenting her findings to the board, and based on what she'd seen today, there would be some significant recommendations. The plane touched down smoothly in Atlanta. As they taxied to the gate, Maya gathered her belongings and prepared for the next phase of her plan. She wasn't just going home tonight. She was bringing back evidence that would help transform an airline and possibly an entire industry. Maya kept her phone camera pointed down at her tray table, angled just enough to capture Heather's interaction with the elderly Asian man 3 rows ahead. The flight attendant's body language was stiff, her smile tight as she practically dropped his coffee on the tray table, some of it splashing over the rim. No apology, no offer to clean it up, just a quick turn and walk away. Maya stopped recording and added a timestamp to her notes. That made 17 documented incidents in the 3 hours they'd been in the air. Most passengers probably wouldn't notice the pattern, but Maya had been trained to see systems failures. This wasn't just one flight attendant having a bad day. This was something deeper. She glanced at her watch. 1 hour left before landing. Her phone vibrated with an incoming email. William Parks, CEO of Regional Air Group, wanted to know if she could come straight to the office after landing instead of waiting until Monday. Critical situation developing, his message read. Board meeting moved up. Need your preliminary assessment ASAP. Maya typed a quick reply. Will come directly from airport, ETA 5:30 p.m. As she put her phone away, she noticed Kevin, the more key, professional flight attendant, watching her with curiosity. Had he seen her documenting? She gave him a polite nod, which he returned before continuing his rounds. Thomas, the businessman beside her, had fallen asleep about an hour ago. The scotch had done its job. Maya was grateful for the quiet. It gave her time to organize her thoughts and prepare for what was coming. The intercom dinged softly. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be beginning our initial descent into Atlanta in, about 15 minutes. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin for arrival." Heather moved through the first-class cabin, checking that seats were upright and tray tables stowed. When she reached Maya's row, she paused. "Your tray table needs to be up," she said, her tone clipped. Maya nodded and folded the table away. "Thank you for the reminder." Heather's eyes narrowed slightly, as if trying to determine if Maya was being sarcastic. Maya kept her expression neutral. After a moment, Heather moved on. Thomas stirred beside her. "Are we landing?" he asked, blinking. "Away sleep." "In about 20 minutes, Maya replied. He straightened in his seat, running a hand over his face. "Sorry about that. Must have been more tired than I thought." "No worries. Long week for everyone." Thomas checked his phone. "Listen, I hope I wasn't too forward earlier. About the job at Lockheed, I just really admire your work." Maya smiled. "Not at all. It's always nice to have options." What Thomas didn't know was that Maya had already made her decision. 6 months ago, she'd been perfectly content leading her engineering team. But William Parks had painted a compelling picture: the chance to transform customer experience across 4 airlines, to fix a system that routinely failed certain passengers, to make travel more equitable for everyone. It was the kind of challenge Maya couldn't resist. Systems thinking had always been her strength, seeing how all the pieces fit together, identifying failure points, designing better processes. She'd done it with fuel systems and avionics. Why not with customer service? The plane hit a small pocket of turbulence, jostling the passengers. Maya gripped her armrest reflexively. Flying never bothered her. She knew exactly how aircraft worked, had helped design components for some of them. But turbulence always triggered that primal part of the brain that didn't like sudden drops. "Not much longer," Thomas said, misreading her tension as fear of flying. Maya nodded. Her tension wasn't about the flight, though. It was about what came after. The weight of what she'd witnessed today, and the decisions she would need to make. Across the aisle, a young black woman with a sleeping toddler on her lap pressed the call button. Maya watched as both Lisa and Heather noticed the light. Lisa started toward the passenger, but Heather put a hand on her arm, saying something quietly. Lisa frowned but stayed put. Heather took her time walking over. "Yes?" Heather asked, not bothering with a smile this time. "Could I get some water, please?" the young mother asked. "My daughter's feeling a little sick from the turbulence." Heather sighed audibly. "We're preparing for landing. Beverage service is over." The mother looked distressed. "Please, she's really not feeling well." Before Heather could respond, Kevin appeared with a small cup of water. "Here you go," he said kindly. "Poor little one. Turbulence is no fun." The mother's relief was visible. "Thank you so much." Kevin nodded and moved on. Heather's expression darkened as she returned to the galley. Maya made another note on her phone. The captain's voice came over the intercom again. "Flight attendants, prepare for landing." The crew made their final checks of the cabin. Maya stowed her phone and tablet, then closed her eyes for a moment. She ran through the mental checklist William had given her. Document specific incidents, note patterns, identify key personnel issues, assess overall customer experience. She had plenty of material now. More than enough to make her case. The plane descended through the clouds, the Atlanta skyline appearing in the distance. Maya felt the familiar drop in her stomach as they approached the runway. Then the gentle bump as the wheels touched down, followed by the roar of the engines reversing thrust. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Local time is 4:37 p.m., and the temperature is a pleasant 72 degrees. Please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened until the captain turns off the fasten seatbelt sign." Maya half listened to the standard arrival announcement as the plane taxied to the gate. She had about 45 minutes to get to Regional Air Group's offices downtown. If traffic wasn't too bad, she'd make it just in time. It was a pleasure meeting you, Dr. Johnson, Thomas said as they stood to retrieve their bags from the overhead compartments. I meant what I said about Lockheed. Thank you, Maya said, shaking his hand. I appreciate the vote of confidence. As passengers began to file off the plane, Maya deliberately took her time. She wanted to be one of the last to leave. She noticed Kevin watching her again, a thoughtful expression on his face. Finally, when most of the first-class cabin had emptied, Maya gathered her things and moved toward the exit. Kevin was standing by the door. Thank you for flying with us today, he said, then added in a lower voice. I hope the rest of your experience was better than how it started. Maya paused. Some parts were better than others, she said carefully. Kevin nodded, seeming to understand her meaning. Safe travels, Dr. Johnson. Maya stepped into the jet bridge, her mind already shifting to the meeting ahead. She'd need to be direct but fair, present the evidence without emotion but make it clear that changes were needed immediately. Her phone buzzed with a text from William. Car waiting for you at arrivals. Look for driver with your name. Sure enough, when Maya reached the arrivals area, a driver was holding a sign with Dr. Johnson written on it. As she approached, he smiled. Dr. Johnson? I'm Pete. Mr. Park sent me to bring you to the office. Thank you, Pete, Maya said, following him to the waiting car. Once they were on the highway, Maya took out her tablet and began organizing her notes. The incidents fell into clear categories: different treatment based on perceived status or race, selective enforcement of rules, variations in response time and tone. She created a simple spreadsheet, noting times, descriptions, and personnel involved. Pete glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Big meeting? He asked. You could say that, Maya replied. Mr. Park seemed pretty eager to get you there. Had me, waiting for an hour just to make sure I didn't miss you. Maya nodded absently, focused on her data. The picture it painted was troubling but clear. There were systemic issues at Coastal Airways, and based on what William had told her, the problems extended to the other airlines in the group as well. As they pulled up to the gleaming glass tower that housed Regional Air Group's headquarters, Maya took a deep breath. She'd faced tough boardrooms before. This wouldn't be any different. Pete opened her door. Good luck in there, Dr. Johnson. Thank you, Pete, Maya said. She straightened her jacket and walked into the building. The security guard at the desk looked up. Dr. Johnson, Mr. Parks is expecting you. 15th floor, boardroom A. The elevator ride gave Maya a few moments of quiet to center herself. When the doors opened on the 15th floor, William Parks was waiting. Maya, he said, extending his hand. Thank you for coming directly from your flight. I hope it was informative. Very, Maya said, though not in the ways I would have hoped. William's expression grew serious. That bad? We have work to do, Maya confirmed. He nodded. The board is waiting. They need to hear this directly from you. As they walked toward the boardroom, William lowered his voice. Just so you know, we've had 3 discrimination complaints filed against Coastal Airways in the past week. The board is concerned about potential legal action. Your assessment couldn't have come at a more critical time. Maya wasn't surprised. What she'd witnessed today was exactly the kind of behavior that led to such complaints. William paused at the boardroom door. Are you ready for this? Once you walk in, there's no turning back. You'll be our new director of operations, responsible for fixing everything you're about to criticize. Maya met his gaze steadily. I've spent my career identifying problems and designing solutions. This is no different, William smiled. That's exactly why we hired you. He pushed open the door. Around a long mahogany table sat 8 people, 4 men and 4 women, a mix of races and ages. All eyes turned to Maya as she entered. Ladies and gentlemen, William said, let me introduce Dr. Maya Johnson, our new director of operations. She's just completed her first undercover assessment flight on Coastal Airways, and I believe she has some findings to share with us. Maya stepped forward, tablet in hand. This was the moment everything changed, for her career, for the airline, and for countless passengers who deserved better. Thank you for meeting on such short notice, she began. Based on what I observed today, we have significant issues to address. But first, let me show you exactly what I saw. The boardroom fell silent as Maya finished presenting her findings. She had walked them through each incident, shown them the discrete video clips she'd captured, and presented the data in clear, undeniable patterns. No one around the table looked comfortable, exactly as it should be. To summarize, Maya said, her voice steady, in a 3-hour flight I documented 17 separate incidents of differential treatment. The pattern was consistent. Passengers of color received slower service, more scrutiny, and less courtesy than white passengers, particularly white men. First-class rules were selectively enforced, and most troublingly, when passengers expressed discomfort or made simple requests, certain crew members responded with visible annoyance or outright dismissal. William Parks leaned forward, his fingers steepled. And you're confident this wasn't just one bad flight attendant having a bad day? The data doesn't support that conclusion, Maya replied. While one flight attendant, Heather, was responsible, for the majority of incidents 2 others showed similar patterns. Only one crew member, Kevin, demonstrated consistently professional behavior toward all passengers. An older woman at the far end of the table, Patricia Reynolds, the head of legal, according to the nameplate in front of her, spoke up. This aligns with the complaints we've been receiving. The same patterns, the same types of incidents. Dr. Johnson has just provided us with direct confirmation of what our customers have been telling us. A middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair shook his head. One flight, though. Is that really enough to draw such sweeping conclusions? Maya turned to him. Mr. Davis. Robert Davis, VP of Operations. Current VP, I should say. He gave a tight smile. Mr. Davis, Maya continued, you make a fair point. One flight isn't enough to draw conclusions about your entire operation, but it is enough to identify clear issues on that particular route with that particular crew. And when combined with the complaint data Mr. Parks shared with me, which shows similar patterns across multiple routes, it suggests a systemic problem rather than an isolated incident. Davis frowned, but didn't argue further. What's your recommendation, Dr. Johnson? William asked. You're starting officially on Monday. Where do we begin? Maya took a deep breath. This was the part that would ruffle feathers. I believe we need immediate action on 3 fronts. First, a thorough review of all customer-facing staff, with particular attention to those who have received multiple complaints. Second, a complete overhaul of our training protocols, with a focus on consistent service and unconscious bias. And third, a clear message from leadership that discriminatory behavior, whether intentional or not, will not be tolerated. And the crew from today's flight, William pressed. Maya met his gaze. Based on what I observed, I would recommend immediate administrative leave for 3 of the 4 flight attendants, pending a full review of their service records. If those records show a pattern consistent with what I witnessed today, termination would be appropriate. Robert Davis let out a low whistle. That's pretty harsh for a first offense. With respect, Mr. Davis, Maya countered, I doubt this was a first offense. People don't suddenly start treating passengers differently. They do it because they've done it before and face no consequences. Patricia Reynolds nodded. From a legal perspective, I agree with Dr. Johnson. If we don't take decisive action now, we're creating additional liability with each flight. The 3 discrimination complaints we've received this week alone could potentially cost us millions if they go to court. William looked around the table. Other thoughts? A younger woman, Diane Chen, Chief Customer Officer according to her nameplate, spoke. I've been pushing for this kind of review for over a year. The customer data has been telling us something's wrong, but we haven't been listening. I fully support Dr. Johnson's recommendations. There were nods around the table, though Robert Davis still looked skeptical. Robert, William said, noticing his expression. You have concerns? Davis sighed. Look, I'm not saying there isn't a problem. The data's pretty clear. I'm just worried about morale if we start firing people without giving them a chance to improve. I understand that concern, Maya said. And for most issues, I'd agree that progressive discipline is appropriate. But when it comes to treating people differently based on their race or appearance, we need to draw a hard line. Our passengers deserve better. And frankly, so do our employees who are doing it right. William nodded. I agree. Patricia, please, draft the administrative leave notices for the 3 crew members Dr. Johnson identified. We'll deliver them tomorrow morning. He turned back to Maya. Would you be willing to come with me? I think it would be valuable for them to hear directly from you. Maya hadn't expected that. She'd thought her involvement would be behind the scenes, at least initially. But she understood the message William was sending. The new director of operations wasn't afraid to face problems head-on. Of course, she said. I'll be there. Excellent. William looked around the table. Any other questions for Dr. Johnson? Diane Chen raised her hand slightly. I'm curious. Beyond the crew issues, what did you observe about our overall service model? The little things that might not be discrimination but still affect the customer experience? It was a good question, and exactly the kind of systems thinking Maya had been hired for. Several things stood out, she replied. The boarding process was chaotic. The safety demonstration felt perfunctory. The meal service was disorganized. And there was virtually no recovery when things went wrong, like when turbulence interrupted service. These are all fixable problems with better processes and training. Chen nodded, making notes. I'd love to discuss this further when you start, officially. Absolutely, Maya agreed. William checked his watch. It's getting late, and I'm sure Dr. Johnson would like to actually get home after her flight. Unless there are other urgent questions, I suggest we adjourn and reconvene tomorrow at 9 a.m. to implement these initial recommendations. There were nods around the table. As people gathered their things, several came up to introduce themselves to Maya. The energy had shifted, from skepticism to cautious optimism. They'd been waiting for someone to finally address these issues head-on. As the boardroom emptied, William stayed behind with Maya. Well done, he said quietly. You didn't pull any punches. That's not why you hired me, Maya replied. No, it isn't. William smiled. I hired you because you see the problems others miss and aren't afraid to fix them. Tomorrow's going to be tough, facing that flight crew directly. Are you sure you're up for it? Maya thought about Heather's dismissive tone, about the young mother being denied water for her child, about the older Asian man with coffee spilled on his tray. Yes, I'm sure. They need to understand this isn't just about one bad day or one passenger's complaint. It's about a pattern that affects real people. William nodded. My assistant has arranged a car to take you home. We'll pick you up at 8 a.m. tomorrow. The crew's flight arrives at 8:30. I'll be ready, Maya assured him. The ride home gave Maya time to reflect on the whirlwind day. When she'd boarded that flight this morning, she'd simply been gathering information for her new role. She hadn't expected to find such clear evidence of problems, nor to be implementing changes so quickly. Her phone buzzed with a text from her husband, David. Flight land okay? Dinner's waiting when you get home. Maya smiled and typed back, landed safe. Interesting day. Tell you all about it soon. Love you. As the car pulled into her driveway, Maya felt a mix of exhaustion and determination. Tomorrow would be challenging, but necessary. The confrontation with the flight crew wasn't something she was looking forward to, but it was the first step in fixing a broken system. David met her at the door, wrapping her in a warm hug. Long day? He asked, taking her bag. You have no idea, Maya replied, following him into the kitchen where 2 plates of pasta waited. But I think it's about to get a lot more interesting. Over dinner, she told him everything. The incident with the headphones, the pattern of behavior she'd observed, the emergency board meeting. David listened intently, his brow furrowing. So tomorrow you're going to fire the flight attendants? Who singled you out? That's some poetic justice. Maya shook her head. It's not about justice or revenge. It's about fixing a broken system. These flight attendants are just symptoms of a larger problem. But yes, they need to understand there are consequences for treating people differently. Well, if anyone can fix it, you can, David said with confidence. You've been redesigning systems your whole career. People are just a different kind of system. Maya smiled at his faith in her. a much more complicated system. Later that night, as she prepared for bed, Maya's phone buzzed with an email. It was from William, with the subject line "Crew Information." Attached were the personnel files for the flight attendants from today's flight. Maya opened the first file. Heather Wilson, senior flight attendant, 8 years with Coastal Airways. As she scrolled through, a pattern emerged. 6 customer complaints in the past year alone, all from passengers of color. Yet her performance reviews were consistently positive, with notes about her efficiency and attention to detail. The disconnect was telling. The airline had been focusing on the wrong metrics, rewarding speed and procedure over actual customer experience. No wonder Heather had continued her behavior. She'd been effectively encouraged to prioritize rules over people. The next file was for Lisa Chen, 2 years with the airline. Fewer complaints, but still a pattern of selective enforcement. Again, her reviews praised her efficiency but made no mention of customer satisfaction. Kevin Wright's file was different. Only 1 complaint in 3 years, and it had been resolved with a simple apology. His reviews mentioned his exceptional customer care and ability to de-escalate difficult situations. Here was someone who understood what service really meant. Maya closed the files and set her phone aside. Tomorrow would be about more than just addressing these 3 individuals. It would be about setting a new standard for the entire airline. As she drifted off to sleep, Maya found herself thinking about that moment on the plane, when Heather had insisted she remove her headphones while ignoring other passengers doing the same thing. It had been a small incident, the kind many people would brush off or attribute to a flight attendant having a bad day. But small incidents built into patterns, and patterns revealed systems, and systems could be fixed. That's what tomorrow was really about, the beginning of fixing a broken system, one flight crew at a time. 6 months had passed since that fateful flight. Maya stood at the window of her new office on the 15th floor of Regional Air Group's headquarters, watching planes take off and land in the distance, each one carrying hundreds of passengers who, she hoped, were having a better experience than she'd had that day. A knock at her door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Diane Chen, the chief customer officer, entered with a tablet in hand. "The quarterly numbers are in," she said, unable to hide her smile. "You're going to want to see these." Maya gestured to the chairs across from her desk. "Show me." Diane sat down and pulled up a series of graphs. Customer satisfaction scores are up 27% across all 4 airlines. Complaints are down 38%. And here's the really interesting part. Our strongest improvement is among passengers of color, where satisfaction has increased by a full 42%. Maya nodded, studying the data. "And retention?" "That's the other good news." "WS," Diane said. "Employee turnover is down 15%. Turns out most of our people actually wanted to do better. They just needed clear expectations and proper training." "What about revenue?" Maya asked, always practical. "Up 12% year over year. The word is getting out. We're becoming known as the airline group that treats everyone well, not just certain passengers." Maya allowed herself a small smile. 6 months of hard work was paying off. "And the training program? The new hires who've gone through your revised training are outperforming veterans across every metric. We're now requiring all existing staff to complete the same training by year end." It hadn't been easy. That first confrontation with the flight crew from Maya's inaugural flight had been even more difficult than she'd anticipated. She could still picture Heather's face when Maya and William had met the crew at the gate after their morning flight. The shock, then anger, then fear as William explained who Maya really was and what she'd observed the day before. "This isn't fair," Heather had protested. "You were testing us without our knowledge. How is that ethical?" "We weren't testing you," Maya had replied calmly. "We were experiencing our airline as our customers do, and what we found was unacceptable." Kevin, the one flight attendant who had consistently shown professionalism, had nodded in understanding. "I've seen it too," he'd admitted quietly. "I've tried to compensate when I could, but—" His voice had trailed off, but his meaning was clear. The problem was systemic, not just a few bad apples. In the end, Heather and one other flight attendant had been terminated after further review confirmed long patterns of biased behavior. Lisa had been put on probation and required to complete extensive retraining. Kevin had been promoted to lead a new peer coaching program, but addressing that one crew had just been the beginning. Maya had spent the subsequent months completely overhauling how Regional Air Group hired, trained, and evaluated its customer-facing staff. Out went the old metrics that prioritized speed and rule enforcement above all else. In came new standards, focused on consistent, respectful service for all passengers. The training now included substantial sections on unconscious bias and cultural sensitivity, but also practical scenarios and role-playing to help staff recognize and correct problematic behaviors. "There's one more thing you should see," Diane said, pulling Maya back to the present. She handed over her tablet, open to an industry publication. The headline read, "Regional Air Group Sets New Standard for Inclusive Air Travel." Maya skimmed the article, which detailed the transformation she'd led and its impact on the industry. Other airlines were starting to take notice, with several implementing similar training programs. "The board is thrilled," Diane added. "William, can't stop bragging about hiring you." Maya handed back the tablet. "It's a good start, but we still have work to do." "Always the perfectionist," Diane said with a smile. "But even you have to admit, we've come a long way in 6 months." Maya nodded. "We have. Thank you, Diane, for your support and for this update." After Diane left, Maya turned back to the window, watching a Regional Air Group plane taxi toward takeoff. She thought about all the passengers on board, people of different races, backgrounds, and experiences, all deserving the same level of service and respect. Her phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Quarterly review with Kevin's peer coaching. Team. Maya gathered her notes and headed for the conference room. Kevin was already there when she arrived, along with 6 other flight attendants who had been selected for the peer coaching program. They were an intentionally diverse group, representing different races, ages, and levels of experience, Dr. Johnson. Kevin greeted her warmly. "We were just reviewing the latest feedback from the new approach to the safety demonstration." The safety demonstration had been one of Maya's early targets for improvement. The old method had been rote and often ignored by passengers. The new approach was more engaging and, crucially, consistently applied to all passengers regardless of class or appearance. "And?" Maya asked, taking a seat. "Compliance is up nearly 50%, one of the younger flight attendants reported. "Turns out when we actually make eye contact and speak clearly to everyone, they pay attention." Maya smiled. "Imagine that." The meeting continued with updates on various initiatives, from streamlined boarding procedures to improved meal service. The energy in the room was positive and focused. These were people who believed in what they were doing. As the meeting wrapped up, Kevin stayed behind. "I wanted to thank you," he said when the others had left. "Not just for the promotion, but for actually fixing things. I'd been considering leaving before you came on board. The culture was getting toxic." "I should be thanking you," Maya replied. "You were doing the right thing even when the system wasn't supporting you. That's rare." Kevin shrugged. "Just treating people how I'd want to be treated. But it's a lot easier when the company actually backs you up." After Kevin left, Maya returned to her office to find William waiting. "I hear the quarterly numbers are excellent," he said. "The board is impressed." "Diane shared them with me," Maya confirmed. "We're making good progress." William nodded. "More than good. You've transformed our company in 6 months. I knew you were the right person for the job, but even I didn't expect results this dramatic this quickly." Maya appreciated the praise, but she was already thinking about the next phase. "We need to look at our hiring practices next," she said. "The new training is working well, but if we bring in the right people to begin with, we'll have even better results." "Always 3 steps ahead," William said with a smile. "That's why I hired you. Whatever resources you need, they're yours." After William left, Maya checked her calendar for the rest of the day. She had a meeting with the technology team about a new app feature that would allow passengers to report service issues in real time, then a review of the latest customer feedback data. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. Don't forget, dinner with Thomas and Jenny tonight at 7. Maya smiled. Thomas Chen, the businessman who'd sat next to her on that fateful flight, had become a friend. He'd been fascinated by her story when she'd finally told him the truth over dinner a few weeks after the incident. Now he and his wife regularly socialized with Maya and David. Looking forward to it, Maya texted back. As she prepared for her next meeting, Maya reflected on how much had changed in 6 months. One flight, one observation, one decision to act had sparked a transformation that was now improving the travel experience for thousands of people every day. The confrontation with Heather and the crew had been necessary but uncomfortable. Maya had never enjoyed conflict. But as her father used to say, comfort and growth rarely go together. The temporary discomfort had led to lasting improvement. Maya picked up a letter from her desk, a handwritten note she'd received just yesterday from an older black woman who had flown on one of their airlines. For the first time in my 72 years, the woman had written, I felt truly welcomed and respected on an airplane. Thank you for whatever changes you've made. That was why Maya had taken this job, not to fire flight attendants or overhaul training programs, but to create an experience where everyone felt welcomed and respected. The systems and processes were just means to that end. A notification popped up on her computer, 5 minutes until her meeting with the tech team. Maya gathered her notes and headed for the door, pausing for one last look at the planes taking off in the distance. 6 months ago, she'd been just another passenger being singled out for different treatment. Today, she was the architect of a new approach to air travel, one where a passenger's race, gender, or appearance didn't determine how they were treated. The confrontation with the flight crew had been just the beginning. The real work had been in the months that followed, the careful, systematic rebuilding of a culture. That work wasn't finished, and perhaps never would be. Systems required constant monitoring and adjustment. But they were on the right path. As Maya walked to her meeting, she passed a framed copy of Regional Air Group's new mission statement, one she'd helped craft. Every passenger, every flight, every time. Simple words that represented a profound commitment to consistent, respectful service for all. That mission had been born on a flight where Maya had been told to remove her headphones while others were allowed to keep theirs on. A small incident that had revealed a larger truth. Sometimes the smallest moments led to the biggest changes, and sometimes, Maya thought with satisfaction, those changes made the world just a little bit better for everyone.